वनक्कम, मैं हैदर अली सैयद आसिफगंज से यूनाइटेड अंडर तमिल सेवा.
What's the? I'm okay, thank God. Can't complain. I'm at work. Tired of this routine, but it is what it is.
The rat race. You need to get out. Get out.
Need a change.
Well, just yeah. So what's this about? So Hyder Ali helps me connect some Hindu ideas into the Quran. He helps me bring some perspective in many verses that may talk about meditation and chakras and things like that. And I'm just kind of exploring that idea just to see if there's comparative, because I'm into comparative religion more than Quran only.
Yeah, I think we got to understand that, you know, every nation did have its own messages, and each nation has its own rites that they practice in terms of their deen. So could we say that meditation is one of those rites that have been given to these people?
Exactly.
Absolutely, definitely.
Exactly. And Hyder has brought so much like wisdom to me, because he said something profound, that like people have taken spirituality out of religion, and like it couldn't be any more truer. Like it's so true, because like faith is very spiritual, and that's what I found.
Well, that's what I always say, that Islam is not a religion. It's a system that we as humans can interpret it as spiritualism. It is definitely, you know, spiritualism, because everything is energy. We are energy, and our thoughts are energy. Our words are energy. So we got to connect. We are spiritual beings having a human experience, as opposed to a human being having a spiritual experience.
Yes. That's exactly what's going on here. And I think that's why like the Matrix is becoming more popular. It's on the radar, I feel like, maybe amongst this group, or maybe just in general, because I think there's another call to attention to say, like, people, like, you're in the Matrix, like, look, like, and that's why in the Quran it says, like, there are signs for people who understand. Like, what do you think God was trying to tell you?
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
So it's fun. Fun journey.
But I also do believe that, you know, to every nation that did come a messenger, and we have to remember that, you know, they all came with Islam in it.
They did.
And Ibrahim alayhi salam was the one that set these rites of standing, bowing, and prostrating. But some of this has been diluted to other means or other understandings. And that's fine, innit? If people have their understanding, which is completely different to that of what the, you know, we have an understanding of what Islam tells us, that's completely fine. But
the other thing that Hyder Ali brought to my attention was a similar thing kind of happened as it did with Christianity, as it does with Islam. Like man changed the script. Like they changed, and there you go again. Like Allah tells you about people who changed the previous books. And the other thing he brought to my attention was that the Quran was really meant for the children of Israel. Like,
no, it wasn't.
Okay, well, he has a really good argument.
No, he hasn't. No matter what argument anybody presents, that the Quran was for only the children of Israel is nonsensical, because the Quran is a reminder for the world. It came to Arabs, but they were just the vehicle used to deliver to the rest of humanity. But what we also have to understand is that there were pockets of Muslims around the globe before the revelation came to Muhammad. So when they heard of this prophet that had become, and he's proclaiming the exact same message that they were proclaiming to their people, and they knew that there was a Nabi to come, they came from all over the globe, wherever they were, to come to meet him, took that message, learn the message from him, and then take that message out back to their own people. That's how it happened. Mm-hmm. So you can't have this understanding that he came just specific for the children of Israel. No, he didn't. He came for everyone.
Well, hopefully Hyder Ali can explain.
I've heard his understanding before. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess he's here every day. People catch him.
Yeah. So no, the Quran is the only book that came for the whole of humanity, And I do think that the book that Musa came with, potentially that did as well. But, I can't be, certain on that. But then again, not really, because he came for the children of Israel. So Musa alayhi salam came for the Bani Israel.
Yes, yes.
He did. So the book that he came with was for them. But Muhammad alayhi salam didn't come just for the Arabs. He came for everyone. Everyone.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point to kind of deep dive in, because this is a very like in-depth type of understanding. So I think it'd be kind of neat to dive in a little, because there are different arguments, right? It's important to take both arguments and not you always have to have an open mind, right? Like it's okay to explore until you find your own.
Yeah, it's good to explore, definitely, but I think if you don't have the basic foundation understood correctly, then exploring will take you to different realms that you'll think, it's it makes sense because it's subjective, then, isn't it?
Cameron, I'm already in a different realm. Like, this is the thing. I'm too late. It's over.
It's never too late. It's only too late when you're 6 foot under. I always say that. When you're 6 foot underneath that soil, then it's too late. But while you're above the
That's not
ground,
true.
I'm going to believe that.
Age of 40.
No, I think that what it means is, but by the age of 40, you should really know what is right and what is wrong. That you should. But that doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to make a drastic change from one extreme to the other side of the spectrum. What you just
said is people saying the Shahada on their deathbed and become Muslim and go to heaven. Like, it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. Absolutely. I agree. It doesn't work that way.
But the fact that you said like it's too late when you're like deep in the ground, like you're basically saying that you have up until your last breath, which is the same argument as you take the Shahada and you're going to heaven. Like,
okay, no, I don't mean literally that you live a life of a fornicator. Everything that you're supposed to stand for as a follower of the creed of Ibrahim, that you do the complete opposite. But while you're above the ground, you're about to die, and you do like Pharaoh does. No, I don't mean it in that sense. I mean that while you're open, alive, and in your senses, and you're healthy, and you don't see any sign of death coming towards you, as long as you make that change, that's fine, isn't it? But when you're at the door of death, and then you say, "Oh, I believe in this," that is too late. See you later, pal. You're going.
So let me ask you, like, what if I was not a fornicator? What if I like didn't drink? What if I didn't do bad things and I just believed in what I believed in? Like, do you think that I would I would be in trouble?
Well, because what we have to understand is that the only one thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not forgive mankind for is to do shirk. If you're not doing shirk, but you are a fornicator and you are you don't do anything. You don't do anything which Allah has forbidden us from doing, yeah? But there's one thing that you do, and that is shirk. Then you're going to hell.
Well, yeah, shirk is a full one-way ticket to hell. Like,
yeah. So it doesn't matter how good of a human being. Yeah, doesn't matter how good of a human being that you are, what pious life that you lead.
No layovers, just one direct ticket to hell.
Yeah. So that's that's the one thing that we need to fully understand. And unfortunately, these so-called Islamic world, they haven't got a Scooby-Dooby-Doo about it. It's true, though, isn't it? They haven't got a clue. They think that, like you said, long as you say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, on the deathbed, they're going to go to heaven, or go do Hajj, and I get forgiven all my sins. What?
Oh, I know.
Even just now, one of my cousins, he's going to do Hajj, he's going to do Umrah or something, I don't know, he's going there, and one of his aunties has asked him to do Hajj for her husband. I'm like, are you for real? That thing doesn't happen.
She's proxy. She's doing what they do in a securities vote, proxy. Like, who does that?
It's just nonsense. Like,
it's not nonsense. But this is how deluded people are. Like, they're just deluded.
Yeah, totally. That's why, for me, I don't even believe Mecca is a place. You know my position on that. I'm 100% certain that Mecca is not that place.
I'm 100% certain as well. It's
no, and Mecca and Medina are smoke and mirrors.
Well, I mean, the thing is that people like to exchange the word Makkah and Qibla in the Quran as one and the same, but they're not.
No, they're not. Qibla is, Qibla means two things in it. One is your spiritual direction, and that is focusing towards Allah and Allah alone Himself, and serving Him and Him alone.
Exactly.
And then the physical understanding is facing towards Masjid al-Haram, the physical building. But that is not as important as your spiritual Qibla. That is the most important thing. That's what Allah says.
So
Well,
that's your third eye.
yeah, you could understand that as in that sort of perspective, but I'm not going down that way yet. I like to keep things very simple, so your average
But I'm
layman
just,
can understand things.
yeah.
It's just
Well, I just like I like the ancient history. I'd rather go into ancient history because it's probably less canonized or
yeah,
less influenced by politics. Because in the indigenous colonies, like in tribes, like they didn't have this power struggle. It was just about community. So that's why I think whatever teachings that they may hold could be a lot closer to the truth that I'm looking for, or the truth that matches the Quran essentially.
I think what you got to understand is that the only truth that we have, one is the Quran. That's it. Everything else is created, repackaged, regurgitated by man to manipulate the masses. So
We
that's
know
why
this, but
we look.
we also know that there's truth in every lie, right? Like, don't you think
Well,
that's?
yeah, there is, but how are you going to be able to make that distinction in it unless you have
But
an element truth with you to be able to make that distinction with them?
you know,
However, for example, now, we had this discussion before that in a previous room that Saudi Arabia is destroying all these old ancient sites. Are smoke and mirrors. They don't have any ancient sites.
they don't have any ancient
They don't
science.
exactly.
They don't
But
have
look at
anything.
people believe this nonsense because it's what I always said, isn't it? The longer that you tell a lie and the louder that you tell it, it eventually becomes the truth.
It
And that's
does.
and that's what's happening, and that's what has happened, and that is something that will continue to happen.
No,
It's
so what I'm saying is that, like, I hope you don't misunderstand me, because yeah, I believe in the Quran 100%. I'm a Muslim, blah blah blah. Like, but the thing is, I've now taken understudy of the Quran, where I'm trying to piece together some of these hints and like some of these things. Like, that's where my interest lies. Like, it doesn't
yeah,
have anything to do with my faith at this point. It just has to do with an understudy, like essentially connecting the dots, like
yeah,
understanding what's beneath what we see. So that's kind of where I'm doing my truth seeking adventure or secret agent type of stuff, because it's just my own interest, and by no means, like, what I say, I'm not special. Like, don't take my word for it. Like, do your own thing.
totally. Totally agree. I think the most important thing is to have a very open mind. There's a lot of people that don't have a very open mind, very closed off, tunnel vision. That's it. I'm on the Quran. I'm not going to look at anything else. And for word, it says this and that's it. No. You can't do that. You have to. When Allah talks about, for example, the creation of a baby in a womb that's unseen to the naked eye, and He says, first we create the bones, and then and I think it's the bones first, and then we cover the bones with skin. I think it's that sort of where. Now, to understand that, we can use science and say, well, yeah, that in actual fact is true, because we can prove that what the Quran is saying by taking an autopsy of a baby, for example, or with the technology that they have, they can see the development of a child within a womb of a woman. They can see that from the beginning to the end. So, this is what people don't seem to understand, that you have to look at what Allah has created outside the Quran, because nature is another book of Allah. And we study that, and He keeps telling us to study, look at the stars, look at this and look at that, because He's telling us to look, because you'll see that the same God that sent you this book is the same God that created everything else, and
Exactly,
you connect
Cameron.
these together, and it's perfect.
Exactly. So God's command is go study,
Yeah.
go be curious. And I'm like, okay, God, taking your command, gonna go be curious. Like, that's essentially where my curiosity stems from, is because, like, God's given us this advice. He's telling us to do these things, but but people want to stop. People want to stop, and that's fine. Maybe they don't have the time or the capacity to deal with it, but like I do, and I'm here, and I'm gonna do it.
Yeah. Sorry, got a phone call coming in, but
You can answer it.
if we have this understanding that the first word that came to the Rasul alayhi salam was Ikra. This word Ikra it's a word that opens up many different sort of meaning. It's like
Can you
knowledge,
share?
read,
Yeah.
recite. It means so many different things, and people don't even stop to, at once, don't even stop to think, well, if this was the first word that came to the Rasul, and this word is so deep that it's talking about many things all wrapped into one. So not just read and recite, but it's knowledge. You need to educate yourself. You need to learn many, many different things. So why did, one of the greatest men that ever walked on the earth was illiterate when the first word that came to him, which was Ikra, which is...
It's just my own interest, and by no means, like, what I say, I'm not special. Like, don't take my word for it. Like, do your own thing.
Totally agree. I think the most important thing is to have a very open mind. There's a lot of people that don't have a very open mind, very closed off, tunnel vision. That's it. I'm on the Quran. I'm not going to look at anything else. And for word, it says this and that's it. No. You can't do that. You have to. When Allah talks about, for example, the creation of a baby in a womb that's unseen to the naked eye, and He says, first we create the bones, and I think it's the bones first, and then we cover the bones with skin. I think it's that sort of way. Now, to understand that, we can use science and say, well, yeah, that in actual fact is true, because we can prove that what the Quran is saying by, taking an autopsy of a baby, for example, or with the technology that they have, they can see the development of a child within a womb of a woman. They can see that from the beginning to the end. So, this is what people don't seem to understand, that you have to look at what Allah has created outside the Quran, because nature is another book of Allah. And we study that, and He keeps telling us to study, look at the stars, look at this and look at that, because He's telling us to look, because you'll see that the same God that sent you this book is the same God that created everything else. And
Exactly,
you connect
Cameron.
these together, and it's perfect.
Exactly. So God's command is go study, go be curious. And I'm like, okay, God, taking your command, gonna go be curious. Like, that's essentially where my curiosity stems from, is because, like, God's given us this advice. He's telling us to do these things, but but people want to stop. People want to stop, and that's fine. Maybe they don't have the time or the capacity to deal with it, but like I do, and I'm here, and I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, sorry, got a phone call coming in, but
You can answer it.
if we have this understanding that the first word that came to the Rasul alayhi salam was Ikra, this word Ikra is a word that opens up many different sort of meanings. It's like knowledge.
Can you share?
Read, recite. It means so many different things, and people don't even stop to, at once, don't even stop to think, well, if this was the first word that came to the Rasul, and this word is so deep that it's talking about many things all wrapped into one. So not just read and recite, but it's knowledge. You need to educate yourself. You need to learn many, many different things. So why did, one of the greatest men that ever walked on the earth was illiterate when the first word that came to him, which was Ikra, which is a word that has many different understandings that we can take from it? Why did he not practice what he preached? So knowledge is definitely part of Islam in terms of understanding what Allah has created, and then we can understand who we are better and who He is.
Well, not who we are. I would say, like, I mean, here's the thing, like, Allah's message is for humanity, community, equal, right? Because there's no ranks given to people. Like, the message is to be accepting and being just in times of inequities.
Totally.
So it's really simple, right? But then what we've kind of turned in our, like, and that's why I look at the indigenous communities versus our communities, where we rely on these, like, bureaucratic institutions where we're literally just pen on paper, not even an identity. And they don't know who I am, and they'll just reject me based on my paperwork. But if you're in a community, like an indigenous community, you get to state your case as a person. It's more of a human experience, and it's more local, and it's more based on the needs of that community. Because, as you know, in Canada, it's so vast that the needs of Nova Scotians are very different than the needs of Ontarians. So how do you as a national government be able to dissect it. You can't. You simply cannot. Like, it's impossible, and that's why there's inequities everywhere.
Well, the indigenous people of Canada and America, a lot of them are unaware that there are separate laws that these governments have in place for them, that they are a lot more free as human beings as opposed to citizens of these corporations, because Canada and United States, for example, these are corporations.
Yes.
So as a
Yes.
citizen,
Yes.
your rights are literally null and void.
Yes.
But an indigenous, they really are recognized as living, breathing man
Humans.
or woman. But they need to be able to access this information themselves. So the governments do not make them aware of this information,
Well,
but it's there for them.
You see, in Canada, what they've done is given them all the freedoms, but then made it very hard to get those freedoms.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a an S show. Like, on seemingly, it'll seem like, oh look, like they don't have to pay taxes and they don't have to do this. Well, there's severe consequences for them not paying taxes. They get shoved into places that nobody wants to live in, conditions where people can't thrive. So how is that fair? Like,
yeah, because what they've created, this system, it's a web of lies, and you got to be able to know how to navigate yourself through this system. So it is designed, it is there for those who want to educate themselves and do their due diligence and get out of this system. But your average person, when you go into that council office, he hasn't got a Scooby-Dooby-Doo. What are you talking about? He hasn't. None of them did. There's only a few people that do, but that's why you have to have your papers. You got to know what you're standing on, and then you got to know what you're talking about. And it's only then when you know what you're standing on, what you're talking about, will the person at the other side of that screen will not fully grasp what you're saying, but because of the way that you're articulating what it is that you're putting forward, he will then put you onto a different department, and then eventually you will get heard, and then you will go through a certain process, which is still not easy to get or to recognize as a sovereign being.
Yes, and you've shared that story with me before. But can I share something that really struck a chord with me? It was Indigenous Awareness Week or something like that, and there was a girl who went to study to be a lawyer, but in order for her to practice law in Canada, she had to disband her Indigenous status.
Wow.
So that's what I'm talking about. So you'll think seemingly that, oh yeah, they can be part of society, but once they want to be part of society, they can't. So this is where it's all wrong. Like, it's all wrong.
A lot of Indigenous tribes of Canada, and I'm not too sure of Australia, but I know definitely for America, the government has certain funding set aside for these Indigenous tribes to tap into free access. So in other words,
same. They get free education.
They get a lot of free things. A lot of free things. They can go out, for example, buy a brand new car, and through their recognized papers, it can all get paid off without them putting a dime down.
Yeah, and okay, so yeah, like there are some benefits, but then what good are these benefits if you can't use them? So say if I lived in an Indigenous community, I became a lawyer, and now I'm going to move to the big city and get a car. But what good is a car if I can't work? What good is all of these things that you're giving me if I can't use them? So yes, thanks for the car. I'll use it on my community. But how does that get me far in life to bring my car back to my land and go from where, like, one house to the longhouse? Like, what good is it? They walk anyways. Like, they're nature people. They're all community tribal people, right? Like. So I mean, that's the kind of injustices, that inequities that I'm talking about, because seemingly on the surface it's like, yeah, like, no, they're all different. They're practicing shirk. They're doing this. They're doing that. But I'm talking about, like, the deep layer of, like, where did it all go wrong, and like how, like, because I really enjoy people behavior, like social behaviors. So that's perspective that I try to bring in to faith or history or ancestry, because we have to understand that humans have been humans since the dawn of time. We've had needs to go to the bathroom. We've had needs to be social. We've had needs to be married. We've had needs to do business. All the same needs that you see today, we have the same needs that we did 2,000, 4,000 years ago. Now, did my car look like Fred Flintstone's car back in the day? Maybe, but we still had some kind of transportation, but it just looked different. But as humans, we behave the same way. So that's the perspective that I take, because I think man has everything to do with what we have in our hands today. Everything. And then it's just a matter of connecting the dots to a point that you find it, aha, like that's the point, right? That's the turning point. This is the influential, where we lost the monotheism and went into shirk. Because that's what happened in Islam too, right? Like, people worship Prophet more than they worship Allah. Like, there's more khutbah is about the Prophet and what the Prophet says and how the Prophet will judge you on Judgment Day versus how Allah will judge you on Judgment Day. So that's kind of where my head is at, and I know it's not conventional, but I also really don't care.
Vanakkam. Thank you.